Welcome to another edition of Because Miami. Before we get started here on what is going to wear you out with DeSantis talk, I just want to start by saying Miami, as many of you know, is the only city that I have ever loved. And I am presently in the middle of feeling, as I've built a business here and get a lot of my identity from being proud of being from this region. First time in my life I've ever thought, oh, it's unsafe to live here. Everything is totally out of control, and it's about to get worse because you have now, after a Florida legislature concluded its session on freedom that felt like fascism, and as Donald Trump somehow avoids being a president who is a rapist because of the absurdity of can't tell whether it was his dick or his finger, as those two monsters, Trump and DeSantis, go to war for the Republican Party, we have stuff happening all around us. And I want to get this out of the way because I'm not going to be able to do it enough during this segment. We have this. We have this.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
And we have this.
Nazis are his base.
Going to wear you out right now with DeSantis talk. Billy, you're tired of it already, and it's just getting started because I don't think he has the charisma to actually fight Trump. I think he's already losing, according to polling, but it's starting now, right? We've got DeSantis against Trump. This war, this frenzy that is going to be fun to watch them try to destroy each other is about to start.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about this for like a year and a half or something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's exhausting. It really is. And particularly because those of us in Florida have been the victims of really both of these characters for so long. I mean, I'm not really sure who I'm rooting for here in this. It's just absolutely exhausting. And I think when you come out of a 60-day legislative session where very little was done about anything that really matters and affects our lives. I mean, Florida, and this is a, the 21st century town, and we have all the 21st century problems. Every single problem, income inequality, affordable housing, quality of life, infrastructure, public transit, climate change. I mean, you mention a 21st century problem. We have it. And nobody did anything to help us. Nobody did anything to create a law or to improve our quality of life in any meaningful way. We had a war against women, a war against minority, a war against immigrants, a war against the LGBTQ plus community, literally beating up on minority groups with already little to no power, politically or otherwise in this country. And what are we doing?
I am amazed by a number of things here, including Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio and Tommy Tuberville lining up on a sexual assault civil case, lining up.
Yeah, so give me this one.
Tommy Tuberville with no sense of irony saying something the Republican Party would actually like, which is I'd vote now for Trump 2 times if I could. And if you leave them in charge, he one day will vote for him 2 times because of how egregious this is, insulting what I imagine freedom and democracy to be. But take me through some of the most appalling things that we're headed toward or already at in education and all of these stories that are about to bombard America as DeSantis tries to get into the presidential hunt representing I'm freer than the rest of this country. I side Tucker Carlson. You should boycott Fox because Tucker Carlson isn't allowed to speak freely the way he can on Twitter.
Well, is it any wonder they're defending rapists and rape, but there used to be a time when it was not controversial to say Nazis suck. It was pretty easy politically to just say Nazis are bad. We fought a whole fucking world war over it, Dan. It wasn't like a tough one. But now it's just like, well, we can't rankle the base. We don't want to upset the Nazis because they vote Republican. And so that's what this Republican primary is. It's a race to the bottom. Primaries and elections used to be about a race for ideas and the marketplace of ideas and the idea that competition was good for the marketplace and we could challenge each other and find compromise and find a better way to do shit. But now we're electing people to government and paying them with public funds to run our government. And instead of making government better and improving the lives of their constituents, they're there to destroy public institutions and literally reverse faith in them. Education, you mentioned, is a really good example. Just this week in Florida, it was reported that the state Department of Education rejected 82 out of 101 submitted social studies textbooks because they dealt with what they considered inaccurate material, errors, and other information that was not aligned with Florida law, which basically means woke indoctrination. There was an elementary school textbook that had a home support guide on how parents could talk to their children about the anthem protests and why some people choose to take a knee. Elementary school kids are watching football games. They have questions for their parents. This was a home guide for parents. But Florida officials said that was not age appropriate. You had a textbook that talked about different economic systems, and it addressed socialism as an economic system.
The other side of this argument is all, correct me if I'm wrong on this, it is woke as a platform in disguise for the largely religious who are saying the country is going to hell because it's immoral in every different ways and going to minorities, going to people who are not white people.
Racism and xenophobia. Yeah, you'd be right about that. If that's what you're presenting as the counter argument.
But books banned. As we physically flood. We've got an insurance problem. We've got housing crisis. We've got what you mentioned. Nobody can live. Not even Peter Thiel can afford to live in Florida.
Yes, when you've lost Peter Thiel, when you've lost the billionaire who helped finance the woke wars out of the gate, saying that Florida is unaffordable. A man who bought an $18 million, 10,000 square foot compound right here on Venetian Islands. A beautiful, beautiful place from the former CEO of Ford, for crying out loud. When he's saying, I can't move my tech companies here from Silicon Valley because Florida is out of control. And most importantly, what he's saying is that the woke wars are not winnable when you're in an economy like this, when you have an affordability crisis like this, when you're not going to win, white suburban moms and Gen Zers by banning abortion and by banning books.
Peter Thiel is not just rich. Give them the history before we play this sound of who it is saying that our housing crisis is so out of control and affordability is such a problem. Give them the resume of Peter Thiel before we play this sound.
I mean, Peter Thiel is a fascinating and complex character. He is an out gay man. He is part of the so-called PayPal mafia who became a billionaire in the sort of last tech boom, I should say, the previous tech boom, and has exercised an extraordinary amount of power by donating many of those billions to political causes, mostly right-wing and Republican. And like I said, he helped to finance these woke wars, and now he's second-guessing that wisdom as a political philosophy, particularly when it comes to elections and winning candidates.
Can we play the sound, please? This is the man who helped quietly wreck Gawker with the help of Hulk Hogan, correct? This is Peter Thiel out on DeSantis.
We've thought some about moving our offices from California to Florida, and it's a tough thing to do at this point because, the real estate prices in Florida have doubled and the interest rates have doubled. And so if you buy a house in Miami today versus just 3 years ago, you're paying 4 times as much in a monthly mortgage payment. And that kind of an economic cost is probably not enough to offset
the taxes.
All the wokeness in the world, or even the taxes. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really hard problem to solve. Like, what do you do about these runaway rents, these runaway housing costs? That's a super hard problem to solve. I have no idea how to solve that. I understand why DeSantis doesn't talk about that, but it surely is a bigger problem.
Here's the thing. When they talk about parental choice, and they hate when we change the name of their bills to don't say gay, but the truth of the matter is parental choice is not really parental choice. Parental choice, Dan, is when a parent says, I don't want my kid to read that book. Fine. It's your choice. Parental choice is not one parent saying, I don't want any kids to read that book. And that's what's happening. That's the difference. You have these AstroTurf organizations who like Moms for Liberty, also known as Planned Parenthood, who are out here banning books for everyone based on the complaint of one. You had a Florida school district who banned a graphic novel called The Little Rock Nine about the desegregation of schools in Arkansas and about how the governor there, Orville Faubus, brought in the National Guard to prevent 9 black children from desegregating a public high school. And despite the fact that the school board has declared it historically accurate. What they're saying is that it is, quote, difficult for elementary students to comprehend, end quote. And I would say it's difficult for all of us to comprehend, but yeah, that's why you have to start teaching kids about the real history of America.
I cannot believe how clever a nickname Planned Parenthood is.
Oh, it's great.
It's unbelievable
It's not
how
mine.
good that is.
I can't
Let's
take credit.
play again. This is, I should have mentioned this before, from the Barry Weiss podcast. Here's billionaire Peter Thiel telling you the entirety of what is happening in Florida and out on DeSantis.
You know, I think DeSantis would make a terrific president if he's the Republican nominee. I will strongly support him in 2024. But I do worry that focusing on the woke issue as ground zero is not quite enough. Just to give like a very different kind of a metric, that the focus on identity politics, on the woke religion, you know, is probably a distraction from stagnation. It's a distraction from economics. It's a distraction from the way in which the younger generation in the U.S. Is probably going to have a hard time having as a good standard of living as their parents. And so there's a set of issues we do not want to talk about.
Billy, you have been very informative because we keep talking woke this, woke that. And one of the things filed under woke is DeSantis' decision to fight Disney, a bad idea in our corrupt state to fight the entity that has been here longer, power grabbing in the state of Florida than any entity, any economy. A bad fight for him to pick. He is losing it. You've mentioned that in the polling. What is the latest? You've covered the whole history of Disney with us. What is the latest as it regards to missteps that he is making as he heads into a fight with Trump because he continues to fight Disney when he probably needs to not be fighting Disney?
Yeah, Disney survived a lot of Florida governors, you know, a lot of presidencies, a lot of regimes. I anticipate that they will survive this one. I don't think they're going to come out of it unscathed because you have a situation here where these are not serious people who want to talk about policy. What you just have is white men who can't admit when they're wrong. That's basically what you're dealing with. So this guy's got to double, triple, quadruple down. And the Florida legislature just, I think, gave him another $6 million war chest to pay outside attorneys to fight these unconstitutional losing battles that we're forced as taxpayers here in Florida to fight left and right because our government does crazy shit like picking fights with Mickey Mouse. And what's happening is that you have an extraordinary record that the Disney lawyers, who are better than the Florida lawyers, all of you know, the lawyers have accumulated where...
It's hard to explain to people the talent level difference in this lawyering, correct?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, though, is what it always comes down to, which is judges and what decisions judges will make and what decisions, the Supreme Court may ultimately make. But I think what you have here is a textbook case of First Amendment retaliation, and they have memorialized this through countless videos, through countless sound bites from the governor and the Florida legislators themselves who were pushing this legislation to punish Disney for exercising its First Amendment right to express some minor dude, that's the thing, too, is that Disney wasn't fighting anybody on anything. They put out a pretty lame statement saying, we think this is wrong, what the government's doing, which is like enshrined in the Bill of Rights, numero uno. Okay, and yet he continues to go and stick his foot in his mouth on television, which just goes to show you the impunity, the mob boss mentality of this government. When you have already admitted that the only reason you targeted this company is because you didn't like their political speech because they disagreed with you publicly. And then he goes on Newsmax, of all places, and gives an interview this past week where he quintuples down at this point. He says that, hey, guess what? I've been pretty successful at this because we haven't heard a peep out of Disney since I bitch slapped him. He basically says like a mob boss going out there like, I dared you to open your mouth. We got them to shut their mouths. It's unbelievable.
Can we hear this and see this video from Newsmax?
Well, first, the big issue with Disney was they exercised a lot of political influence in this town, and they tried to fight us on things like parents' rights and things that are really important to the people of Florida. We beat them on that. We signed the Parents' Rights Bill, and we've expanded protections, and we've done a lot of stuff to go back and fight woke ideology. Since our skirmish last year, Disney has not been involved in any of those issues. They have not made a peep. That ultimately is the most important, that Disney is not allowed to pervert the system to the detriment of Floridians.
So on that front, you see this as a win for you already.
So that's a win for the people of Florida.
Mob boss. I mean, what else?
Roy, as the attack on minorities continues, as you prepare, as you brace for more overt racism than we have ever seen from politicians that are seeking, as Billy said,
Nazis are his base.
2023, Nazis. 2023, that's the base that you're afraid of angering. That's the base you're placating as you continue to stir fear of others are going to come and take all your stuff more than they already have. As you stir white unhappiness to blame others, you see what's happening in a place that you've lived all your life, that you love the same way that I love. And you see Florida and it embarrasses you and it scares you how?
Same as it ever was, Dan. If you look at it from a national perspective, like it's been a generational fight just to get equal rights here, just to be accepted at the table. So when I look at it as a husband, as a father, I'm looking at my daughter Claire, thinking about when she has children, her children will have to fight this fight. And to me, that's the saddest thing of all, is like our children's children is going to feel this way.
We were, it seemed like, headed to some sort of progress, Billy, and it has been a retreat and a backlash that one can assume starts with Barack Obama was running this country and Donald Trump and DeSantis identifying, both of them identifying an unrest and an unhappiness that I underestimated personally, and now threatens the place that I live from every angle.
I think having a black man in the White House broke people's brains. I think that's, and I think that Republicans have, looking at the demographic shifts in this country and understand that they're basically the dinosaur cursing the meteor hurtling toward the earth, know that the only thing they can do is to demagogue and to gerrymander and to effectively cheat. And so you have to exploit that. You have to exploit that fear. And they learned something very interesting in 2008 in the state of Florida when not only people of color but Floridians turned out in droves to vote for Barack Obama, not only our first black president, but one of the most liberal candidates to certainly ever win the presidency since Jimmy Carter. On the same ballot, Dan, Florida passed a state constitutional amendment that codified marriage as being between a man and a woman. So what we did was we turned out and voted for Barack Obama for president and then discriminated against and destroyed the civil rights of another minority group. So that was a real wake-up call, too, to Republicans that, oh, we can actually get more people on our side and under our tent if we go after this particular group, the LGBTQ+, the drag queen community, the trans community, and it was a very clever and sophisticated move. I think, I believe that that's working. That's why I say this primary is a race to the bottom. I think Peter Thiel, sees it and suspects that something's up, but it's not helping any Floridians. I have to keep coming back to that because just 2 days ago, Ron DeSantis signed a bill that he himself proposed to the legislators in February, that the Republican House and Senate dutifully passed, and he signed into law, that requires, used to be public companies, but now it requires all companies, including private companies with 25 or more employees, to verify the immigration status of all workers. And what's happening around the state of Florida, Dan? Construction and agriculture work sites are deserted, are empty. People are forced to walk off the job and not show up. So in a state whose economy is tourism, Disney, construction and development, and agriculture, the governor is destroying those industries in our state. It's remarkable.
Okay, you laugh, and it's to keep from crying. I will continue here if you're not quite appalled enough by where it is we are and where it is we're headed. we've been talking about this issue for a bit, but now voting rights are also under attack in a way that is unusual and unconstitutional. And we're going to talk to somebody next whose life was really altered, yet more pain involved because he voted.
And in the meantime, I think we should hear from our listeners. Don't you, Dan?
I forget what the hotline number is. Give me the hotline number, Roy. I need the hotline number because we've got to get our listeners fired up here because they've been insulting Billy and I via hotline and an answering machine message that I have been displeased by and underwhelmed by.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
786-505-9842. I appreciate you doing that to me, Billy, as we move through the show, not knowing the number yourself and calling for calls while not having the number. 786-505-9842. I had a tease into the next segment, and you just shit on it. Thank you.
Apparently, I guess you have a warrant?
For what?
I'm not sure.
For voter stuff, man.
For voters.
It's what it is. I think the agents with FDLE talked to you last week about some voter fraud, voter stuff, when you weren't supposed to be voting, maybe.
I didn't.
So
What are they talking about?
that's
man?
what
Why is they-
we're not the case agents, but what you got to do, they have reduced your bond quite a bit. It's 2 felony charges for voter fraud, but they've reduced it to $500 bonds. So it's $1,000 total.
Oh my God, man! What
So, yes, sir. So unfortunately, right now we're gonna have to take you to jail, but you got a bond right away. You don't have to go to first appearance, nothing like that. So
bond?
That was body cam video of Tony Patterson in Tampa, Florida, being arrested last year by Governor Ron DeSantis' Office of Election Crimes and Security. He is one of 20 people that were arrested for voter fraud because despite a new state constitutional amendment allowing the restoration of voting rights for some felons, others are not eligible due to the nature of their crimes. But many of those 20 cases, Dan, have slowly fallen apart. 6 have been dismissed. 5 other defendants took plea deals with no jail time. Only 1 case has gone to trial, resulting in a split verdict, and the others are still pending.
A simplified version of this is people were encouraged to vote, voted, and then were told they had done something that was fraud or criminal because they had executed their American right to vote.
And despite the failure of this Office of Election Crimes and Security, the Florida State Legislature just tripled the annual budget from about $1.2 million to $3.1 million, so they can continue wasting time and resources and depriving people of their liberty and property. And to that end, we have joining us now Peter Washington, who served 10 years in prison, was released about 12 years ago. And in putting his life back together after we passed this state constitutional amendment, did what he thought, I imagine, was the right thing to do, which is register to vote because he thought he had his rights restored.
After being encouraged to register to vote.
And more importantly, after receiving a voter registration card from the state and from the county, who presumably did their due diligence and realized whether or not Mr. Washington was eligible to vote. Mr. Washington, thank you for joining us right out of the gate. I just want to know what it's like coming out of prison for 10 years, trying to rebuild your life, your job, your family, relationships, your reputation. What was that like the last 12 years before this happened?
It was a real struggle. You had to rebuild trust. People that people had lost in you. Even with family members, it was hard because you had to really walk with integrity. And you still do, as you see, because what now happened.
And you've been out of trouble the last 12 years, other than this?
Yeah, except for a couple speeding tickets, that's it.
And last year, the police show up at your door. What did that feel like? Did you know what the hell was going on? How did it go down?
Well, the detectives I have great respect for because they came to my house and they asked me some questions, and then about a week later, I say about a week and a half later, they came back to. I received a call, and he said, "You need to get home." And I'm like, "Why?" He said, "I got some bad news for you." And I was like, "What's going on?" He said, "They put a warrant out for your arrest, but I, since you've been honest with us, I don't want nobody to pull you over. I want you to come back home, and we'll due process you from your home."
How did this happen? How did you come to register to vote, to get a voter registration card? How did this happen?
Well, I had got married. Me and my wife, she said, "Well, let's vote because you ain't never voted before. And this something we can do together as a married couple." And so I went through the process, filling out the paperwork, and she helped me, direct me in how to fill it out. And we sent it in, and they sent back the card.
Did you know that some felons or convicted felons were having their voting rights restored? Were you aware of that, or what did you know about that?
Yeah, I knew about that. Felons had were getting their rights restored. Um, a friend of mine worked for the coalition of voters' right, and I believe when I got out of when I was released from incarcerated, that they said that my rights was restored because of the timing of my offense.
Peter, can you explain to me where you are on the spectrum of emotions? Hurt, angry, confused. This isn't what I thought America was. Like, what describes your general disposition about trying to live your life correctly, trying to do the right things, and then finding yourself in a position where your life has now been harmed again, correct? Because this isn't just something that is an inconvenience. All of a sudden now you are distrusted again because you violated parole.
Right. I ain't on parole, but what happened was that I lost my job. A lot of my friends, well, you know who your friends are when you get in when situations happen. A lot of people I thought were my friends were talking behind my back. My wife was going through some recourse on her job. People were coming to her and like, "I seen your husband," and kind of whispering behind her back. It was a lot of hurt, a lot of frustration, a lot of betrayal. I didn't even think that I'd be facing that once again. You know what I'm saying?
What is the practical damage that this has done? Just voting. What has happened to you?
Well, like I said before, I lost a good job. I was blessed to get another one. Some friends which I thought were friends, pulled back from me. It just I appreciate my pastor because he always been there, and I met Mr. Whedon, who been diligently fighting for my freedom.
What are you doing right now for work? Because you lost irrigation work, correct?
Right. A friend of mine helped me get another job. I had started my own business, but that was being questionable. People start questioning that and start backing off. Where I was getting calls all the time, then the calls became fewer and fewer.
Mr. Washington, what did it feel like? Because I think people don't understand this when you have been deprived of being a free person out in the world with the same rights we all have. What does it feel like to be out and to say, "Oh, I get to participate now in my government," right? I get to go, I get to vote, I get to make decisions about my state, my country, for my family. What does that feel like?
Just like slavery all over again.
Peter, your wife, who encouraged you to do this in the name of love and partnership, feels. What does she have to say about all of this?
It hurt her death. I mean, that's the first time I ever seen my wife cry hysterically. My wife she's a emotional control person, and that's the first time I truly seen her fall apart. All her hope was lost.
Do you understand what's happening here? And I ask this question innocently, right? Because I can't imagine that in jail, before going to jail, after going to jail, that you thought this was possible in whatever you imagined America to be, even understanding how racist our justice system and laws can be.
No. Be honest, I don't understand, and I can't understand. You know, you go in, you do your time, you try to do your time in there correctly, where it have no recourse on it, and then you get out and you still have to jump through so many loops, and they still, pull the rope from under you or pull the rug from under you. No, I don't understand.
Peter, you've described the situation as it feels like slavery all over again. Do you think there's some effort here at new Jim Crow laws, at some kind of effort to discourage people and certain people from feeling like they, even if their rights are restored, feeling like they can vote, that they're free to vote? Maybe they're scared because of this situation, that despite the fact that your case was dropped, it sends a message to people that maybe innocent or not, you or right to vote or not, you might get in trouble for no reason.
When this happened, the status of the percentage of voters that voted the first time dropped tremendously. I mean, people were scared to vote, especially black voters. They really were scared to vote.
Peter, I'm sorry this happened to you. Thank you for sharing your story with us, sir.
Oh, no problem. Somebody got to speak out. We got to stop being scared and let our voice be heard, how it affects not only us, but our families.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I'm very fond of this saying that Los Angeles is where you go when you want to be somebody. New York is where you go when you are somebody. And Miami is where you go when you want to be somebody else.
Miami is for shady people.
It's always been a sunny place for shady people.
That's right.
And it's been a great place not only to launder your money, but to launder your reputation or your name. It's a place with a transient population and a lack of institutional memory where no one gives a shit about who you are, where you came from, where your money came from, as long as the checks are clearing and the booze is flowing. And unfortunately, the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow, as evidenced by this kind of idea of fraudsters, outright con men, entering the public sphere and entering government as a way effectively to not launder their reputation per se, but almost as kind of cover, as diplomatic immunity. It's like Donald Trump going on MSNBC and admitting to crimes and going well, I wouldn't tell Lester Holt if I was committing crimes, right? It's well, we all just watched you do that. And so you have these characters that enter government now to basically say well, if I were such a criminal or a bad person, would I be elected to office, and would I have actually committed all these crimes? The short answer is C, is yes. Yes, you did commit these crimes. And yes, you are guilty. And yes, you apparently are willing to go on national television or on social media and confess to said crimes. We have one of these characters here in Miami who is emerging as one of my favorite local con men, who was definitely inspired by this kind of Trump era of anybody can be in government, this shamelessness of it doesn't matter that that this guy, Fabian Basabi, a.k.a. Fabian Kunanen, it doesn't matter that he has an arrest record dating back to at least 2008, includes criminal charges for DUI, failure to appear, public urination, verbal abuse of officers, disorderly intoxication, and strong-arm robbery of a woman's cell phone, which resulted in his capture by the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force in 2020. These, Roy, are just the youthful indiscretions of a man in his early 40s in the 2020s. So really all should be forgiven for this guy. But he is now being sued in a rare bit of good news. Incidentally, he also, when he tried to run for office the first time in 2021, a Miami-Dade judge threw him off the ballot because he lied in elections documents about where he lived. He did not live in the city of Miami Beach and thus could not run for city commission in Miami Beach. Nonetheless, he persisted and is now a duly elected Republican state representative for what is, I believe, a plus 11 Democratic district. And he has been there voting the worst on all the worst things, as you can imagine, this legislative session in Tallahassee. But he's now being sued by a business partner. I don't even know where to begin with this. This Miami New Times article, when I was trying to tweet it, I'm like, what the hell is Naomi talking about? It's this crazy lawsuit where he got involved with this dude in the UK who was going to import 5 Land Rovers to the United States, and Fabian was going to sell them in Miami, and instead, he basically, the lawsuit alleges, stole them. One of them he just started driving around. 2 of them he put in storage in California. 2 of them he stripped for parts. Another one he just left parked on the street outside his parents' house. The whole thing is crazy, but pretty consistent with this reality TV loser, serial scumbag, and gaslighting gasbag turned, of course, Florida elected official. He is known famously. You might remember, Roy, we showed some video of him at the Pride Parade on Ocean Drive in Miami Beach, where some guy is just yelling at him, "George Santos! George Santos!" It's just, and the camera whips around, and Fabian is 5 feet away. He's right there smiling and waving. So he is known as Miami's George Santos, and George Santos making news this week. A man with numerous Miami connections and Florida connections, not the least of which is he used to work for a Ponzi scheme that was headquartered in Florida. His company, the DeVolder organization, is also a Florida LLC. We know one of his most prominent donors and a client, in fact, of his is John Ruiz's ex-wife and his sons, who were clients and donated to his campaign. But George Santos was indicted this week. Here's a guy who thought, again, that he could kind of launder his criminal past in government. Not only that, but like Donald Trump, who realized, wait a second, when you run for office, schmucks just give you money. They just give you free money. They call it political contributions. These idiots. Donald Trump used to have a hustle, right? He used to have to be a slumlord or sell steaks or board games or bottled water or what. Now he just goes out there and says, "I'm running for something," and suckers, these marks will just give their money to this guy. And so George Santos is like, well, I can do that. I've been a hustler and a con man my whole life. So, in addition to being a drag queen, he's like, I can make this happen. And so he did. He made this happen, and he stole money from his contributors that he claimed was going to his campaign and was in fact going to his finance his luxury lifestyle. And he has been charged with money laundering, wire fraud. What are the charges? The charges are crazy.
A whole bunch of fraud charges, charged for lying to the House of Representatives. It's pretty bad.
But this guy, it reminds me a lot of the Miami River Cop scandal here in Miami. There was an era in which basically the entirety of a single graduating class of the Miami Police Academy wound up dead or in prison, working with cocaine traffickers and murdering some cocaine traffickers in their own scheme to steal cocaine and to sell it on the streets of South Florida. And what's interesting about that is obviously these guys did not become cops and then absolute power corrupted absolutely. These were criminals who realized the best way to operate would be from within law enforcement. So these were criminals who decided to join the police academy, become police so that they could get away with their crimes. And that's kind of what we're dealing with in this world of like Trump and Fabian Basabi and George Santos. And people like George Santos are finding a lot of love and embrace in the arms of various crypto cowboys. He went to the Hamptons last year, and he got donations from, for example, the former FTX chief regulatory officer and various other crypto cowboys. And as we know, those guys might not keep making it rain imaginary coins anymore. As the Wall Street Journal reported just days ago in an article by Deborah Acosta, and a Miami journalist herself, made good at the Wall Street Journal, New York Times before that, and I believe the Miami Herald before that. She wrote, headline, Miami's love affair with crypto is souring as Bitcoin faithful flock to the city. On the eve of the annual Bitcoin conference, the city and its mayor have mostly moved on from crypto. What's funny is that it's kind of like how it started, how it's going. The article opens, the lead is that a year ago when the annual Bitcoin conference opened in Miami, the city was the country's biggest boosters of digital currency. Miami coin traded on a global crypto exchange. The Miami Heat basketball team played at the FTX arena, and cryptocurrency exchange blockchain.com was preparing to move its headquarters to a big, huge office in the Wynwood neighborhood. Now, as Miami prepares to host Bitcoin 2023, none of that is happening anymore. So just like the free state of Florida is a lie, the Miami miracle is a myth. And when Miami Mayor Francis Suarez,
hey, you did it,
says that this, and I didn't have to go, wait for it, wait,
good job,
wait for the cart, wait for the cart.
In God we trust, and it's that God
Whoops.
that's been protecting
I didn't
me.
actually mean to press. I f***ed it up.
Fat fingers.
I did not mean to do that. I was looking for this one.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
That's like it's a catch-all. I love that one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg Cody. Words I never thought would come out of my mouth, but thank you, Greg Cody. It's a great gift you've given me and all of us. But the Miami Miracle is a lie, and the Miami Miracle is dead. What did Francis Suarez say? He said that this is not a moment. This is a movement. It's a Miami movement. It's like Miami movement. That's what I do after I eat at Sergio's. A Miami movement. That's not, it's not a miracle. It's not a movement. It was a moment. Grand opening, grand closing. It is what?
It was a Miami moment.
It was a Miami moment. Good segue, dude. This is Roy's way of telling me to wrap it up. So, Wall Street Journal has declared the crypto Cowboys era dead in Miami. Very funny and interesting revelation from it is that funny and interesting revelation from the Wall Street Journal article is that since the growth has slowed down, Francis Suarez actually has ordered his staff to start cold calling like VCs and tech CEOs and beg them to move their companies to Miami. So basically the mayor is running a boiler room out of City Hall trying to get this to happen. Here's the problem, though, and this is what the Wall Street Journal article reveals, is that the aftermath of this, the ashes of this, all we're left with is the least affordable housing market in the country. We don't have these great jobs. We don't have a Bitcoin dividend that Francis Suarez promised us from the Miami coin yield that has now lost 99% and been delisted. Those magic beans that Ponzi Postalita was selling. All we're left with is Miamians have nothing. We're holding the bag, and we can't afford to live here anymore because of what's happened. So there was no kind of miracle. There was no kind of economic boon for real Miamians. It was what I said it was all along. It was a real estate hustle. That's all it was, to sell second, third, and fourth homes, luxury condos and houses to rich people and price us out. But don't worry. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez has a solution. In today's Miami moment, stop being poor.
One option is to try to find another apartment that is equivalent or less expensive or whatever. That's obviously an option. So that's on the cost side. But on the income side, you know, the other option is for your job to pay more, your employer to pay more because they're probably making more money because they're also benefiting from this inflation. Or B, find a job that pays better.
Stop being poor. Stop being poor. Let the wealth trickle down. Let the money hit the floor. If you are a poor person, then just go out and find a job. If you can't secure a job, then go to college, don't be a blob. If you can't afford tuition, then try to get employed again. And if you still can't get a job, go work for your rich uncle then. Just stop being poor. Stop being poor. Let the wealth trickle down. Let the money hit the floor.
If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
That is where we agree. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Go Heat, go Cats, Cocaines.